2 long years have passed since the events that led to the coronation of Brandon Stark as King of the Andals, the Ruiner and the First Men, Lord of the Six Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm. In these 2 years, we have lived in a period of peace and harmony, where the visions and orders of the Three-Eyed Raven, combined with the intelligence, experience, and wisdom of the King's Hand, have overcome any unforeseen challenges. Repair projects have begun in the capital, and all the castles and towns that suffered from past wars, which now remain in the past. New times are upon us, and new houses have emerged that crave power and glory. On the other hand, we must remember that many of the great dynasties of Westeros lie in the deepest crypts of this world. Great houses such as the Tyrells in the Reach, the Freys in the Riverlands, or the Boltons and the Umbers in the North have all shared the same fate. There are also other houses that have not fallen into disgrace, but whose family trees have lost several branches. For example, House Targaryen, which with the death of Daenerys Targaryen at the hands of her nephew, Aegon Targaryen, has been reduced to a single member, who no longer even bears a family name by choice. Additionally, we must note that the surviving Unsullied and their commander, Grey Worm, left Westeros after Brandon Stark's coronation. Tired and beaten after losing the one who had become their mother after freeing them from slavery, they decided to sail for the island of Nath, where they would spend the days defending the Islanders and preventing the slave trade in those parts. Likewise, the surviving Dothraki chose to remain in Westeros. In fact, they wanted to continue killing the Men of Steel and tearing down their stone walls. But the king, with the help of his most loyal servant, prevented that fury from escalating. As a reward for their restraint, he offered them the castle of Harrenhal, along with a selection of prostitutes and gold to calm the fury that resides in the heart of those barbarians. Furthermore, Brandon always kept a close watch on the Dothraki, knowing that at some point he would have to pay for his mercy with blood. We find ourselves where it all began, in the true north of Westeros. The Night's Watch faces a significant dilemma. First and foremost, the Black Brothers ask themselves, why must this brotherhood persist? The White Walkers have been destroyed, and the Wildlings, once fierce enemies of the Watch, are now their closest allies. To address this great question, it was necessary to convene a council at Castle Black to elect the next Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. All the Black Brothers gathered at Castle Black, where the long voting process began. The candidates were, firstly, Dennis Mallister, who sought the position due to his experience and wisdom. Secondly, there was Coulter Pike, a young man full of ambition who wielded the sword skillfully and showed leadership qualities, though he seemed somewhat unpredictable and impatient. Lastly, there was Jon Snow, who due to the demands of many was forced to stand as a candidate. At the end of the voting, Jon Snow was unanimously chosen. but for some strange reason, John refused the position. After all that had happened, he felt empty and had no desire for power. Instead, he decided to join Tormund and the wildlings beyond the wall to continue recolonizing the true North. For this reason, Jon cast his vote for Dennis Mallister, who, with Jon's support and his own qualifications, became the new Lord Commander. In his new role, he sought to resolve the lingering doubt by delivering a powerful speech. He glorified the Night's Watch's purpose and vowed that if any threat were to rise again beyond the wall, they would fight it and send it back into the shadows. Thus, the Night's Watch would endure. Walking, only 420 healthy men remained to defend the innocent. The next day, as ravens left Castle Black for all the realms of Westeros, Jon Snow mounted his horse and rode for hours without rest until he reached the settlement of White Tree, where the wildlings led by Tormund had settled. The village had several wooden houses, a small well in the center, and a great white tree towering over their cabins. These structures had been built previously by the wildlings, who once resided there before the evacuation of Hardhome. In addition to these ancient buildings, the wildlings had constructed more cabins and large bonfires to ward off the northern cold. Alongside the wildlings was Ghost, who eagerly ran to greet his master. Tormund also greeted his best friend with great enthusiasm. That evening, Jon had an extended conversation with Tormund about how to reclaim all the free folks' settlements. Tormund explained that recolonizing the entire territory beyond the wall would take much time and resources. At that moment, they had only 1,357 warriors to accomplish what Jon had envisioned it in such a short time. Over several weeks, they prepared their best fighters for the first expedition, with their sights set on Hardhome, a place where the Night King and the prince that was promised first faced each other, where the former raised the dead and the later escaped with ships, saving the lives of the living. On the same day, one of the ravens sent from Castle Black arrived at Winterfell. The Queen in the north received the message from the new Lord Commander and instantly refused to send any men to the war. After the wars against the Lannisters and the White Walkers, the Northern Army had suffered too many losses, and Sansa Stark was unwilling to further reduce the size of her forces. Nevertheless, the Lady of Winterfell summoned her vassals to discuss the North's future and its people. All the Northern bannermen arrived at Winterfell, ready to decide various matters alongside the Queen. Lord Wyman Manderley was the first to take a seat in the front row, with Lord Robert Glover of Deepwood Moat beside him. Both knew that they were the North's strongest houses at that moment, so they sat closest to the Queen. During this meeting, several points were discussed. The first was the fate of the Dreadfort. House Homewood requested these lands, arguing that no Boltons remained alive and that the lands were rightfully theirs due to proximity and their unwavering loyalty to the Starks over the years. However, the Queen disagreed, pointing out that someone still had a legitimate claim to those lands. With a distant look in her eyes, she recalled that the last lord of the Dreadfort had married her before the gods and had fostered her for weeks. For that reason, the lands of the Bolton now belong to me by right, Sansa declared. After those shocking words, the Northern lords acknowledged their queen's claim to the Bolton lands and moved on to the other matters. After the Battle of Winterfell against the dead, Lyanna Mormont had been killed. As a result, House Mormont was left without a leader. However, because Bear Island is inherently strong, its people would only accept a leader born on the island. Sansa decreed that the most loyal Mormon lords and surviving warriors of the house would govern the island. Finally, the last issue was the massacre at Last Hearth, the seat of the now extinct House Umber. The Queen of the North had not yet decided who should take over the Umber lands. At first, she considered granting them to House Casterk, but remembered their betrayal when they fought alongside the Boltons against the Starks, leading her to dismiss the idea entirely. Next, she thought of rewarding the Mandalists for their military contributions, but decided against it to avoid upsetting the balance of power in the north. Left with no other option, she ordered the House Wool, one of the hill clans of the north, to send 100 men to occupy Last Earth and maintain some order in the abandoned castle. Additionally, she asked all the northern houses to send settlers and homeless individuals to revive the depopulated lands. After the council ended, Sansa Stark descended into the crypts, alone and in tears. She promised her father that Winterfell would never again fall into the hands of their enemies, and that the North will remain independent forever. To ensure this, the Lady of Winterfell needed an heir. However, after all the suffering and abuse she had endured, she renounced marriage and began considering other options. Over the past 2 years, Lady Stark had undertaken a significant project. She sought out the best Valyrian steelsmiths to recreate one of her house symbols, a legacy Tywin Lannister had stolen from them. The great sword eyes, one wielded by her father Eddard Stark. In these years, Sansa found the perfect smith for the task and acquired all the Valyrian steels she needed. A scarce resource, but one obtainable with enough gold and influence. Thus, one of the House Stark symbols was reborn. As a supreme symbol of power in the north, Sansa placed the great sword above her throne, ensuring all would know that the era of the wolf had returned.